You made it. If you were with us both days, you know what a great journey it's been. And you're now to the last session. And I'm very excited because, as you can see here, Steve Greenfield is my favorite futurist. And so I told him that I was going to tell a little story first, and then I'll hand it off for him to talk a little bit about himself. On Tuesday, just 2 days ago, I had to drive down to Napa from Chico. That's about a 2.5 hour drive. And I decided that I was going to rent a car rather than take my car. And so at Hertz, I showed up in the morning and was going to get my cheap car, and there was a Tesla out front. And I said, well, can I have that? And so she said, well, you're a gold member. So yeah, for a little bit more, you can have it. So I drove it. And so strangely enough, after all this time, this was my first experience, not of being in one, but of driving one. And oh my gosh, I have to tell you, it changed my world. And to me, it's like software. It's like being inside of software and having an app help you. Now, I will tell you the one thing I did learn, and that is when you are predicting range, you have to remember you can't drive as fast as I do. That was the range prediction. Yeah, caught me a little off, but it's okay because I was going to the Bay Area and there's a lot of charging, stations around. So, but oh, my mind was just filled with so many things that were just making it adjust to a different perspective. And so, Steve, I was getting ready for our conversation.
So what was the most surprising delighter?
Oh, the instant nature of its response. It becomes like a part of you. And I'm a very, very good driver, and I'm a very, I wouldn't say like I speed just to speed, but I go fast and I'm nimble. And
Speed
so
with a purpose. Speed with a
I
purpose.
speed with a purpose. And I will tell you, so here was the other funny thing. I got 3 minutes of lessons. So I made a couple phone calls, and they were like, how do I, charge it? But the other thing was I drive a lot with an ICE vehicle. I drive a lot with, you know, um, um, I'll just put it on automatic cruise control. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. My right foot was getting a cramp from not pushing on the pedal, from holding it back from because I would end up looking and going, I'm going 90. What the heck? Right. So the event I was at, Alexi, who gave me a 2 minute lesson on how to turn on the little not the fully automatic
automatic cruise control. Yeah,
but the middle one. So I used that on the way back. It was just amazing.
that's great. Well, there you go. You have your experience. So are you sold? Are you going to go all in on electric now?
I don't know how I can dial back that experience now. I really don't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. There you go. You're a
Well,
convert.
everybody, I know that you know now that I really have fun with Steve and trust him. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your experience, your broad experience, and then we'll jump into kind of noodling on how you look at things with me.
Great. Steve Greenfield, Automotive Ventures. I've had about 23 years in automotive now, really on the vendor side, selling services into dealers. And then, fast forward to just the beginning of COVID. Now, for 3 years, we've been a venture capital firm. So we're investing very early stage in automotive and mobility technologies, typically trying to identify these companies as early as possible. We've now made 20 investments over the last 2.5 years. We just closed our second fund, and we'll be out fundraising for our third fund here very shortly.
Exciting. Taking all of the experience and everything you've seen and trying to help nurture companies that can help start solving some of the problems. Or another way to look at it is bring us into those opportunities, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're going to talk about some of this today, but there's so much change coming to this industry.
Right.
And really what we're trying to do is anticipate what some of those trends are going to be and place our bets on which they're going to benefit the most.
And I just want to make sure, because I always if somebody's interested besides, so your initial fund was all for dealerships, correct?
It's the other way around. The first one was a broad mobility thesis. This one we're
Okay.
closing now is really very vertically focused. We've got car dealerships as investors, investing in solutions that benefit car dealerships.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, let's take a look at some of the things that you by the way, everybody, Steve does this phenomenal and available
Mhm.
monthly recap of what's going on in the industry. I strongly recommend that everybody subscribe to it. And then he does a weekly kind of quick view as well. So his point of view drives a lot of my thinking. And so I pulled out some things that have been in his last weekly, I guess was the one I used, honestly, and
Right.
said, well, I'd like to know more about this stuff. I'd like to talk about how these are going to affect what we're doing here in the commercial space, because commercial is a sub segment of it's a vertical part of Steve's overarching broad understanding of the industry. So
That's right.
I really liked kind of the proof points of this. I've read probably in, I don't know, 5 different places this comment about what jobs are going to be taken over by AI, right? So I love when it says construction and maintenance, because we've been saying,
Right.
commercial vehicles and these vocations, they're not where that's going to happen. So
Right,
what do you
right.
think, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. It's almost ad nauseum now. You can't look anywhere without seeing an article opining about how ChatGPT or other, AI, generative AI is going to take over the world. So you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's actually amazing if you've experimented with this technology at all. It really starts to sink in that, we're effectively going to have a personal assistant. The personal assistant will be embedded anytime you're in front of a screen, whether it's on your phone or, laptop or desktop. And that personal assistant is going to be able to automate a lot of like the mundane, repetitive tasks. So if you're an accountant, if you're, on the phone all day with potential customers, if you're writing, if you're a creative, even for graphic arts, I think it's going to be amazing. And this is really going to unlock tremendous opportunities for productivity. One side, you could argue it's going to eliminate a broad swath of like, laborers, white collar more than blue collar, to your point, Kathryn. But, either way you look at it, I mean, the next generation is going to grow up with effectively being surrounded at all times with persistence that's going to alleviate a lot of the drudgery work that we all got used to, manual tasks that are repetitive. And I think it's a brave new world we're entering into. It'll be fraught with a lot of challenges with plagiarism, and teachers and professors will be wondering if the students actually did the work themselves. But
Yep.
from with all of us in the work world, it's going to be an amazing productivity tool. And so I would encourage everyone to be experimenting with this, stay abreast of it, because it's going to change the day-to-day lives of all of us, I believe.
It's interesting as this has been happening. I flashed back, so it's been a while since I've been in college, but I remember one of the books that I was asked to read in a social class was called Future Shock, and it was
Yeah,
written
sure.
by Alvin Toffler, and it
Mhm.
was shocking at the time. And I went back and started looking at it. He promised me that by the time I grew up and was working, it would be a 4-day work week. I was very offended by the fact that that never happened, but maybe we'll have the same amount of productivity in a 4-day work week, in which case that would not be bad for our lifestyles. I know there's been a big argument about 4-day work weeks, right?
Right, right.
So
Well, you
that's
just moved to the wrong country. You should have moved to France, and you'd already be there.
That's right. True. Well, I'm glad I'm in the space I am as far as feeling kind of protected and a little bit slower to change as far as the need for those folks in those vehicles, right?
Sure, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I love this. I want to get into drone delivery as part of commercial
Yeah,
vehicles, right? Because they
yeah.
are.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you look at the combination of air mobility and autonomy. for moving human cargo, perhaps, but more relevantly, non-human cargo. Amazon is spending a tremendous amount of money in this space, as you can imagine. Walmart is as well. And I think the news here was really there's a fundraise recently from a company called Zipline that's working primarily right now in Africa, moving medical supplies to remote areas. And they just raised money at like a $4 billion valuation. So there's a lot of money coming into this space. And it's not too much of a stretch to think that we got used to next day delivery. Now you can pay for same day delivery. And I think in the future for light packages, you're going to have an option of having products delivered to your house within minutes.
It's there. We were talking, and I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit when we were prepping about the unintended consequences. This is one
Right.
where I start thinking about looking up overhead and wondering how that all gets handled, right?
Right. Yeah.
I guess one of my favorite movies when we were thinking about what will actually commercial vehicles look like. We were looking at The Fifth Element, right, and that
Sure. Yeah.
multi-dimensional in air kind of thing. So who knows, right? Who
Who
knows?
knows? And you hear these stories, where they were testing this out in Seattle. People were shooting them down with their shotguns when they went over their property. So there's going to be that too, right? I mean,
Yep,
personal airspace over my home might have to be protected.
that's right. And I guess it's really interesting when you stop and think about the benefits of that data network and interconnection, right? The benefits, and then also the negative perceptions of it. It's, I don't want to think of the Borg. Okay, now you remember the Borg.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
We won't go there.
You'll be assimilated. Yeah. Hopefully most of your audience gets the reference.
Uh, So this one was actually very timely because I had been just talking to someone as we were preparing for the first day around all the different, Andrew Robolt from Escalent and I were talking about all the different propulsion fuels, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
one of them is RNG. And I said,
Mhm.
what's RNG? And he
Right.
said, well, that comes from refuse sites.
Right. Sure.
And I'm like, well, what a great idea. And then I saw this in your newsletter, and I thought, yeah, we need to talk about this. Yeah,
Well, it's
and I,
funny,
I
you mentioned
certainly like
earlier
the
about
name.
yes,
Sorry.
exactly. Right. Exactly. But science fiction kind of many times indicate what's going to happen in the future. And if you think back to, I think it was the third version of Back to the Future, where I think they end with them putting compost inside the atomic
That's
chamber
right.
to power the DeLorean. I don't know that we're that far from it now. So sustainable aviation fuels out there, recyclable fuel. I mean, they're talking about potentially for F1 races and racing series, but in this case, talking about actually using refuse to build sustainable aviation fuel and allow us to get away from some of the carbon production and the damage to the environment that regular sort of like petrol extraction causes. And it's exciting. It's really interesting. I mean, aviation is an interesting spot now because a lot of talk about hydrogen, a lot of talk about batteries powering planes, at least for short commercial flights. And with batteries, it's always a power to weight ratio,
Right.
effectively, right? The more power we can get per kilogram, the more we'll be able to have longer haul. But for the time being, not a lot of speculation that we're going to fly from LA to New York powered by batteries. But for short haul, we may very well have short haul commercial flights based on batteries in our lifetime.
I think that in addition to those kinds of discussions too, when you think about um, the whole, I guess part of this trip I was on, I ended up hearing one of the senior execs from Bridgestone talking about, tires and how, well, we all know, or if you haven't heard yet, I'm telling you, in the electric vehicle environment, tires are going to have to be replaced twice or three times as frequently because of the
Right, right.
torque and because of not just the torque and the weight, but also I forget that thing where it goes backwards and gathers more power, right?
Oh,
Like,
regenerative braking.
yeah,
Regenerative
yeah.
braking.
So
Yes.
all of
Right.
those are different than what current tires are designed to do. And
Right.
so, it's like, okay, not only unexpected, consequences, but things that affect the total cost of ownership that maybe you aren't thinking about yet. But
Right.
what struck me in the meeting when he presented was, I did not realize this, but did you know that tires aren't sold to the aviation aviation companies? They don't sell tires. They actually the way that tires are paid for is by takeoff and landing. Did you know that?
Hmm.
I did not know that. I'm like, well, heck, that kind of makes sense because from a safety perspective, you'd want somebody to be in charge of making sure that it was going to be good for X numbers of them. And I flashed
Okay.
back on, the changes when there used to be you used to get a copy machine, right? And you'd
Sure.
buy
Sure.
it and you'd go buy your this and go buy that. And then all of a sudden you were paying for every copy instead of paying for the machine, right? And so
Ah,
this is one
interesting.
of the
Yeah.
evolutions that I'm seeing that's happening from the last 2 days. Everybody is talking about how they can get together and create a total cost of ownership package that is
Mhm.
predictable and that everybody's kind of sharing in that value delivery as opposed to just
So maybe
separate stuff.
maybe when you buy your Tesla, you won't own the tires, you'll subscribe to your tires.
Maybe, and there's that he's got that new um, offer right now where if you jump on it, they'll give you I forget how much time of it on the full the opened up software, right? So that you
Right.
can have the full
Full
autonomous for X
self-driving,
period of time.
full self-driving, right.
That's right, full self-driving and normally a $1,500 a month fee, but for X period of time, you can try it for free. And I'm like, to me, there's a lot of technology that's changing and all of that, but I'm also looking at the business side of it and how that and the partnerships are all evolving.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
cool. So you've done a lot of work on this.
Yeah, I mean, starting to lay out sort of like our investment thesis. I mean, we will be raising our next fund here shortly and building out our investment thesis around mobility, right? So
And that
really
and
think
that fund
through.
is the one that's open for everybody, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
when we start raising, we haven't started raising it yet, but it
Yeah.
won't be only vertically focused on dealers. And it's exciting. Some of the things we've talked about today, but there are massive areas of opportunity, I believe, around many of these areas. Many of which are going to touch commercial, whether it's autonomy or vehicle connectivity. Some of the
Shared
interesting
assets is a
innovation.
big discussion right now.
Yeah, shared out. I mean, and everything that's going on within sort of agriculture technology, commercial technology, and mining and construction is all really interesting. Where in those verticals, you don't have the constraints you do with passenger vehicles. So it really is amazing. And it's a nice intellectual exercise to think through which areas are of most interest to us as we're hunting for early stage companies to invest in.
And how do you do that? Do you kind of like reverse engineer it from what you see out there, or do you actually go and say, "Well, I want to find three of these and three of these," or what's your process?
Well, yeah, it's a great. You kind of like have a bingo card when you're running a fund, right? So in our case, we were trying to find 20 companies to invest in per fund. So you want to punch the bingo card according to categories, and I've mapped out the categories here on this slide. So we have subsections, and over time I'll kind of unveil that to everyone so as not to overwhelm folks with one addition. But within each of these, we probably have 5 or 7 subsections that are of interest to us. So obviously, you multiply 5 or 7 times the 7 here, we're not going to get to punch every space on the bingo card, but that does give you at least some direction for the kinds of companies and the areas in which you have interest, where you think solutions need to get built. There are problems out there, solutions need to get built. And then you can go sort of like align the companies you meet on a day-to-day basis with the slots that are available on your bingo card and try to fill in those slots.
And are you mostly looking at US based companies or are you international at this point?
We're international, so we see companies literally every week. India, Israel, continental Europe. Australia, China. So we see, a lot of companies come out of Africa and reach out to us. So yeah, we are a global fund, and it's very interesting to see and understand how, this space is evolving at a different pace depending on which continent you're on.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, maybe next time, it would be fun to kind of, pre-prep and do an international commercial view with what
There you
you've
go.
been seeing and talking through that. Obviously, we've been, um, singularly focused on the US market, not even our company, not even going into Canada and Mexico, although we've had some conversations because there was a lot of, I guess I would call it taxonomy and
Right.
it was just like it was like the data was like in the 60s,
Sure.
clipboards, nobody calling the same thing, anything like each other, no, standardization or consistency anywhere. And I
Sure.
think now that we've done that we've created that, there could be an opportunity to start kind of aligning and comparing in other markets. And I will say one of the things that I remember, there's a national association called the National Truck Equipment Association, NTEA.
Hmm.
They host
Hmm.
every year Work Truck Week. It's in March. And I remember going to some of the very early ones and looking at how different the commercial vehicles were that were in a different country. Like they were so
Ah,
different. But over
sure.
the last 10 years, they've become closer and closer intentionally. I mean, manufacturers want to continue to open their market and be able to serve multiple markets with the same product. And so
Right.
it's naturally evolved into the products becoming more and more similar. Now, how they're sold and that kind of, as on the retail side compared to Europe and other countries, it's very different, right? The
Right.
dealer
Right.
network here is so unique compared to other countries. Yeah, we'll have to. I'll do a little research. Maybe we can dig into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a lot of fun. We should definitely explore that. That would be a lot of fun.
So one of the big conversations that Steve and I always have is, and just so you know, this is kind of my ongoing joke with him. When I first met him, he had this really great map of all the different, departments in the dealership. And so I made him put commercial in. But I think over the last couple of years, Steve, you've really seen, especially with your investments and kind of how much you watch what's going on, how important commercials become to dealers and to the industry as a whole, right? You saw the
Yeah, I mean,
announcement
look,
that GM made, right? Just
yeah,
last night.
yep, that's right.
Want to
Just
talk
last
about
night,
that
yeah.
for a
I
second?
mean,
Because you read
yeah,
that.
I mean, I have a chance to get up in front of a lot of dealer owners in the audience when I'm presenting, and I love to show this slide because I think this is some of the elegance and the defensibility of the business model. Is the fact, when you're running a dealership, you're not running one P&L, you're running up to 8, as we can see here. So as there are natural headwinds, right, or pressures, profit margin compression across a department, and new cars come under pressure, you can reallocate to used car, and you can reallocate to F&I and to service and parts and accessories. And I think a lot of dealers, as you said, Kathryn, are really diversifying the business model by really leaning into commercial. I mean, you've got a very different buyer, right? In some cases, less price subject to sort of price pressure, and the profitability is strong.
Right?
And then you build up those vehicles in inventory that you can have a customer for life, right? And service a small fleet or even a large fleet locally out of a dealership. So I think it's very interesting, and strategically, I am seeing more dealers think through sort of either adding or at least fortifying an existing commercial department, because it's one very key puzzle piece that delivers a significant amount of profitability for many dealers.
Right. Yeah, some of the, just as I think about the last few years, and you acknowledge that Ford did I mean, Ford is 50% of the commercial market share.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it wasn't surprising to see that they acknowledged that when they decided they were going to go through and kind of create their three different I don't know if you call them a division or a unit or
Divisions.
whatever.
Yep, divisions. Yep.
Okay, so and they've continued to invest. And what you look at is you see that, and we actually yesterday we had one of their commercial business managers kind of talk through all the different products that they're bringing now, because that's the whole concept. It's not just the vehicle anymore. It's the whole relationship with that business and what they
Mhm.
need. So they may need telematics, they may need charging, they may need gas cards, they may need just consulting, they may need how does it work with maintenance, how can it be more efficient. And we had in Jim Press's session today with the dealers, we had Spiffy, which is a company that
Sure. Yeah.
does, kind of white label mobile service for dealers, in addition to having their own franchise opportunities. And so, how do you keep taking? I mean, where would it make more sense to have this service reside, to build a relationship with a local business, than in a
Mhm.
dealership, right?
Right. 100%.
Period. And so,
Couldn't agree more.
and yesterday, GM made their big announcement about GM Involve.
Mhm.
And I'm very excited about that too, because we work very closely with GM on projects in the back end, and I've seen how they have all these different solutions and values, and for them to pull it together and to announce it definitely shows their commitment and their acknowledgement, their knowledge about what's really critical to help their customers right now.
Right.
So
Yep. Entirely.
yeah, it's
Entirely.
gonna be
It's nice to see that, yeah, the automakers prioritizing commercial as a key element of dealer profitability.
Well, I've heard rumors. I don't have anything direct from horses' mouths, but I've heard that they're starting to understand that maybe allocating production lines to commercial might
Oh,
make more sense with the softening of the retail demand, right? I mean,
interesting.
correct me if I'm wrong, but is that happening or is that not happening?
I don't know. You would know better than me, but I mean,
No, the
you can tell
demand
us it's.
for retail,
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we're going to see an interesting year, I think, where inventories are coming back with a vengeance. By the end of the year, it's going to look very, very different on the passenger vehicle side.
right?
So I think dealers will be looking for other ways to diversify, and the OEMs as well, perhaps. Yes.
So in preparation for that and seeing that that's going to happen and seeing pricing softening, I think what I'm hearing is that the OEMs are saying, well, maybe now would be a good time for us to start turning towards producing more of the commercial vehicles for which the demand has not. And in fact, the demand keeps building and the
Right.
supply is not coming back quickly enough. People are going,
Right.
fleets are saying, would like to order 100, and they say, well, you can have four,
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, yeah. They will ramp production to satisfy demand, especially if they know they are going to have to discount these vehicles to have them sell.
Right. Yeah. And
Right.
the same thing on the maintenance side. This isn't, I mean, on the maintenance side, personally, I have been known to look for a coupon before I take my vehicle in. But on the commercial
Right.
side, it's all about having a trusted partner. And in fact, I wrote down trust and transparency from the last of our sessions, because it was so true that going into this commercial space, that's what's important. And I don't know, I think that was a survey that Ford did a while ago, but these buyers are 5 times more loyal. And you
Oh,
mentioned it,
wow.
like the
Yeah.
lifetime relationships that you
Lifetime value. Yep.
yeah, and then
100%.
add to that, of course, everybody in the company all buys cars too, right? So,
As well. Yeah. You get the
yes.
knock-on effect. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Steve, can you think of anything else that we should say before closing out for today? It's been as fun as I thought it would be.
No, I'm just glad you put these on. I think, a testament to the quality of the folks that you have in, and it's just an exciting place to be right now with everything that's going on, the pace of change across the industry, and specifically within the commercial segment.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Catherine, for having me.